welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be seeing if we can fit 35s on the Tundra with stock suspension. This is my 2022 Tundra. It's the long bed limited with the TRD off-road package. So it does come with the 20-inch wheels. Not sure on the tire size on those, but right now the truck is completely stock suspension wise, and we're going to see if we can fit some new wheels and tires that I got. The wheels and tires that I got are going to be the RRW hybrid bead locks. They're the RR7H, and those allow you to do a traditional bead lock, or you can just mount them on a standard bead, and then you can also add a little protection ring on there as well if you'd like. With that, I also got some Falcon Wild Peak AT3Ws. They're very similar to the ones that are on the truck, except the tires that come on this truck from factory ends in a WA, I believe, which is a much milder tire. It is still considered an all-terrain, but it's a lot of different. So let's go ahead and get started and see if we can fit these 35s on. Now here are the wheels all mounted up. I had them done yesterday. It did require a lot of wheel weights. This is actually one of the lesser ones, but kind of more than I expected to see on brand new tires. Again, these are the Falcon Wild Peak. These are the AT3W. They're snowflake rated. I got these because pretty good deal on these. New, as well as these are going to be do really well in the snow, which I will be taking the truck a lot to the snow. And a little bit more about these. These are going to be the 6x139 bolt pattern, 17-inch diameter, and 8.5 wide with a 0 offset. Not entirely sure what the factory wheel offset is, but these are going to have some poke to them, and we'll kind of see that later on as well if we can get these to fit. And again, these tires are going to be a 35, 12.5, 17, and these are going to be E-load, so a lot heavier ply. Now, reviewing over the truck, there's some things that I know I'm going to have to take off right away, which is going to be starting with this mud flap here. These factory mud flaps kind of poke out just a little bit, but here on this lower end, they're going to kind of rub right around here. So we're going to take these off, and some other stuff I was reading about and seeing is I may have some rubbing up here with the front fender liner. And a solution to that we'll see is kind of unbolting it, pushing it farther forward, and I can zip tie it up there if I need to. Let's start with kind of putting one of these side by side with this factory wheel to see the difference. So as you can see, huge difference here. I'm pretty stoked right now. This looks really good. Super tall compared to this factory wheel. I do have them pretty much next to each other. They're on level surface, so you can see right there there's already going to be an inch or two of just height based off the tire size. We are coming down from a 20-inch wheel on the factory tires to the 17, and these tires are going to be a 265/60/20, which I believe translates to just around a 33, if not a little bit under. So we're going to be going up quite a bit on the tire size. Let's go ahead and compare the two tread patterns here. Both Falcons, both Wild Peaks, both AT3Ws, except this is an AT3WA, like I said earlier. As you can see, the side kind of profile on these is much less exaggerated on the factory tires. The tread block pattern is obviously way more aggressive here, and these kind of just look like a standard highway SUV truck tire. So Falcon definitely made some different tires to spec for Toyota, most likely reduced weight, better MPG, as well as is going to have a reduced load versus these. I have taken this truck to the snow twice now in both semi-blizzard conditions, and these tires handled phenomenally. I can only imagine what some true ATs are going to feel like. Now let's get started with installing these. Let's get the truck jacked up, see how we're looking on clearance with just one of these wheels on. So I was able to get the wheel on. You can't use the factory lug nuts that come with this. You have to buy some aftermarket ones that don't have this sort of like centering on the factory lug nuts. You have to buy some like this which are just straight and flush, and they are going to be a cone pattern. So with that, got the wheel on, and we're going to turn it just to see what kind of rub we get. I did remove the front mud flaps, so let's go and turn the wheel, and kind of, you can see it clears the fender nicely, but as we get closer, it does kind of graze the fender liner. Luckily, these are not hard plastic, and they're just like a fabric, so it pushes in nicely, which is fine. Now let's check out the front. Now here at the front, as we turn it in, you can see it clears the fender, but again, it just kind of barely grazes that fender liner. You can shut it off. Now, if I do hit a bump while I'm turning, it is gonna kind of hit that fender liner more, so it's definitely gonna be best to get a lift before doing any off-roading or anything crazy with the truck. Now, going over the appearance, I'm not the biggest fan of how it looks, just because it looks a lot lower in the front than, as you can see, the rear might. This is kind of on a slope, so the rear does look a little bit higher than normal. But if we go around to the other side, you can see how the factory tire and tire fits inside the wheel well. So it looks a lot better on this side, but as we go around again, you can see we do have quite a bit of poke, and it just seems kind of low. Not really my kind of taste of how this looks, but just for kind of getting an idea of what it looks like, we're gonna throw all the other wheels onto the truck, go take it out, and kind of do a little 360 on it to see what it looks like. So here we have the truck on a nice level surface, and you can see the difference between the front and the rear. Obviously the rear is going to clear it, no problem. I'm happy with the fitment over there. It could be a little bit higher, but as far as the front goes, it's definitely way too squatted. As you can see, kind of as we come around, pretty generous amount of poke on the wheels, which I think will look a lot better once the truck is actually lifted. And we're going to be going with the Westcott 3-in-1, 3 in the front, 1 in the rear. With that, after driving the truck quite a little bit around town, we are rubbing here when there's a little bit of compression on the suspension and the wheel is turned. We're having some rub right here. The rear doesn't seem to be rubbing at all, just the front. And that's pretty much the only complaint I have about it. As far as the ride quality goes with the 35's, pretty stoked on it. It rides extremely smooth, and the steering still feels light and doesn't feel too heavy. Now, as far as can you fit the 35's on the Tundra, absolutely you can. As you can see, I'm doing it here, but you just have to keep in mind that you are going to be rubbing. Here, as you can see, I've already pulled one of the little pins out. You can't really see it, but I pulled one of the pins out of the fender liner to the bumper mounting screws. Other than that, I would have probably rubbed on the mud flap that was mounted here, which we took off earlier. But due to the rubbing that's happening in the front, I'm going to be taking these wheels off until I do get my lift installed. Now, if you didn't want to get a lift and you still wanted to run a larger tire and wheel, or an aftermarket wheel with a larger tire, I would recommend going down potentially a size, if not 2. These are true 35, 12.5, 17s, and dropping down to, per se, a 34, or roughly around there, would decrease the odds of you rubbing in the rear, and it may kind of level out the truck a little bit more. Other than that, there's pretty much nothing else to show you guys about fitting those 35's. Again, it is doable, but just on those turns where I would have a little bit of compression in the suspension, I could hear the rubbing of the tire on that fender well, and I'm not very happy about it. I'm not super comfortable with having that thought in my mind that I always have to be cautious when I'm driving. So if you're like me and you don't want that, then I would wait until you get your lift installed. If not, go down to a smaller tire size Or potentially if you got a higher offset, these are a 0. If you got something around the 15 to 20 range, which is closer to the OEM fit, you could potentially decrease that risk of hitting the outside of the fender there with your turn-in. Other than that, that's going to be pretty much it for the video today. Stay tuned for when we get that Westcott lift installed and throw these 35s back on and get the final fit of how this truck's going to look. Other than that, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.